My name is Doug Mayer, and I'm the founder of Run the Alps. I started running in the Alps probably 20 years ago. And then I started organizing trips for friends and friends of friends. The next thing I knew, I had Run the Alps. We're based in Chamonix, France, which I really think of as the epicenter for trail running in the world. There's just so much trail running happening here. We run guided and self-guided trips from the Swiss Alps through northern Italy, the Chamonix region in France, and along the iconic Tour de Mont Blanc. One of the things I really like about our trips is that there are all kinds of options. We can welcome a wide range of runners. You don't have to be hardcore. You can run with a group for a while, and if you get tired, take a tram down to a village and have a glass of wine. There always seems to be a hut with drinks and fresh croissants around the corner waiting for us. I just love it here. Our guides are some of the best people I know. We have a real passion for trail running in these mountains. Sharing that with others, that's totally where I get my energy. That's what Run the Alps is all about for me. So you want to talk, hey, we're here in Chamonix. Apparently, we got the thumbs up. Oh, before we introduce people even, you're on the back cover of Trail Runner magazine.
You know, I heard that, and that is
See that?
Probably why my mother just got a subscription.
Hillary Gerardi, welcome to Run the Alps, our rendezvous here at the high end of the Chamonix Valley. My name's Doug Mayer. And we've been told there's some people watching here. So this is our first Run the Alps rendezvous, where we're going to be talking to trail runners and other people in the trail running world here in the Alps. Tell us about yourself. Oh no, I have a question. We call that a cold open. Why do you run such crazy steep stuff?
Because I'm not very fast at running on flat stuff. Is that a good answer?
No. Well, I mean, if that's your answer, that's the answer.
No, maybe I'm not fast because I do the other stuff, but yeah. No, because I love being in the mountains, and because the kinds of trails that like I grew up on are gnarly trails, and so it just seems natural to be like doing that kind of moving through mountains.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's the perfect setup. You grew up, Hillary. We're here in Chamonix, and you've lived here now in France for 10 years.
That's right.
Thereabouts. Yeah, and I should point out that is Mont Blanc behind us going into the clouds.
It's actually in the clouds. You can't see it.
It's in the clouds. It's the Massif then, fine.
The Mont Blanc Massif. Did you know that?
This is what happens. This is what happens in our conversation. We're already doing it.
This is just a little note that
we never get through anything when we meet.
But Mont Blanc, when it is the summit, is spelled Mont space Blanc.
Right.
But when you're talking about the Massif,
there's
as
a dash
whole,
between.
It's Mont.
You taught me this in editing early Run the Alps materials. Yeah. So there you go. Now you know. You've already learned something. We're barely a minute in. All right. You grew up in Vermont. Tell us about Vermont and the outdoors. And before we get to sky running, technical running, and something truly badass that you did very recently, which you're going to want to hear about. If you don't, probably many of you already know. Tell us about Vermont and growing up.
Yeah,
in the outdoors world there.
Gladly. Well, you do know this, but maybe not everybody else does. I grew up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, which is northeastern Vermont. If anyone is joining from not in the U.S., Vermont is like up way northeast, and I grew up in a pretty rural area with my parents and my brother, and he usually attributes any of my success in life to him beating the crap out of me when I was a kid. Because
I grew up in a similar family.
It made me really tough.
Do you think that's true?
I mean, it might be. It might be. a little hard to say maybe, but it could be part of it. But so I grew up there and spent a lot of time like outside. Didn't have a TV growing up, or we did, but only like with the antenna that got PBS if you turned it in the right direction. So most of my time was spent outside. And then when I was growing up there, I started going to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, so just across.
Not very far away, maybe
exactly.
an hour.
Yeah, right. And that's definitely where I would say like cut my teeth on the mountains. Or in the mountains. Anyway, though, actually, for where I grew up, the White Mountains were closer than the Green Mountains. Okay. So that was really sort of.
And for those people who don't know the White Mountains, because I grew up there too, they're very technical, very rooty, very rocky. The trails are very steep. It's really kind of great training for here.
Absolutely.
And you worked in the hut system there for the Appalachian Mountain Club, right?
Yeah, I was actually explaining to Jen earlier that in the White Mountains, like, and in the Northeast generally, so this can be in the Adirondacks and the Green Mountains or the White Mountains, like switchbacks are not a thing. Like I didn't know what a switchback was forever. And so I worked in the Appalachian Mountain Club's White Mountain or High Mountain Huts, which are a series of huts in the White Mountains that people who are usually doing like, you know, sort of day-to-day hikes, and they're all along the Appalachian Trail. And so I worked there for 5 summers. And they were definitely very formative years. It's definitely a work hard, play hard environment.
Right. And I remember at one point you saying something about how you didn't realize it at the time, but you were trail running.
Yeah, well, so I think that like we've definitely, and anybody who's read the recent Run Amok that you wrote about trail running oftentimes being walking, is that like we did usually because I was like late for something, I would be like just hauling as fast as I could, which was usually like really intense hiking through which is pretty technical terrain, and that in the end is like a lot of trail running and a lot of the sky running that we'll talk about soon that you know you do. How did you end up in France? Well, I would say, depending on the day, it's like, you know, Brad's fault. Brad is my husband, Brad Carlson. And sometimes if I'm in a bad mood, it's his fault. But usually, usually it's thanks to Brad. When you're dealing with the French paperwork, right? Exactly. But I understand that. He and I went to college at Middlebury College together in Vermont, and then spent a year living in the Adirondacks together in upstate New York. And he was like in love with the French Alps and had studied abroad here and really wanted to come back. So he was like, "Oh, do you want to go?" And I was like, I don't speak French, but like I'd love to go and spend a winter skiing. And that was 10 years ago. Yeah, that was 10 years ago. So one thing led to another. This is something new for me. So did you not speak any French? You had to have taken French in high school. So no, I took 1 year of French in college, which I should say Middlebury has a really good language program. However, that was my freshman year of college, and then I didn't do it again. So it's like her French is perfect. It really is. It's totally true. You and Brad both. But I spoke Spanish also before, and so like there's that Latin root. But if you haven't guessed yet, I'm not like a terribly shy person. So like I just dove right in and so you guys were teaching at an international school, right? Or for a language school in Grenoble? I taught at the American School of Grenoble for 5 years. And basically, I mean, how did we end up staying for a long time was like, you know, Brad actually did a teaching assistantship program for a year. And then he was like, well, like, how could I stay longer? And so he started a master's. And then after the master's, he was like, well, how could I stay longer? So he did a PhD. And then he became a guide. And then 4 years, well, no, how many years ago did you move to Chamonix? That was about 4 years ago. So I was teaching, and then I also did a master's because like it seemed like something I wanted to do, and I was a little bit jealous of Brad getting a PhD. And we're bouncing around here a bit, but while we're sort of we touched on maybe some of your formative years, and a little bit about coming to France. Why Chamonix? I mean, the answer is obvious, but we need to talk a little bit about Chamonix because this place is crazy. I don't know if it is obvious, like in my case, because like for me, I actually, so I did one trail race in the US, the Great Adirondack Trail Run, which is an awesome race. I really, really recommend it. It's like a 12-miler and through high peaks, and you go like one person every minute. So it's like a very like individual effort and super fun. But I like kind of thought I checked off the trail running thing when I was there.
Yeah.
And then I moved here and several years later, and maybe you'll want to talk about this later, but I actually had an accident skiing, and
yeah, I do want to talk about that. Sorry, you're not getting out of this without us talking about some of the downsides.
But so we were living in Grenoble, and that's where I really started running. And Grenoble has also great mountain access and is a vibrant city. And so like for me, it wasn't just like, moving to France, like Chamonix in the sights. And so during Brad's master's, and then during his PhD, he started working for Créa Mont Blanc, which is the research center for alpine ecosystems. And he wanted to come up and work for that nonprofit. And we were both able to get jobs working there. And so that's actually how we ended up here more than like, we want to go to live in Chamonix, which is also a great reason to want to live here, and especially with Brad also being an IFMGIA
high mountain guide, right?
Yeah.
And we should point out one of, I sometimes get this stat wrong, but one of 3 Americans to have gone successfully through the Compagnie de Guides.
So the ENSA, which is like the École Nationale de Ski et Alpinisme.
Comme j'ai dit, le français c'est pas fait pour.
But the French program, he's the 3rd ever American to make it through that program, which is quite rigorous, like 3 years. And then he is currently working with the Compagnie de Guides de Chamonix, which is the French Chamonix Guides company.
Right. So let's talk. I want to talk a little bit about the Chamonix world here, which is, and actually Chamonix is below us. We're now at the high end of the valley.
Looks down.
I look down on Chamonix. No, I don't. I do literally, not figuratively. And we're not far from the Swiss border here. Italy is just on the other side of the Massif here. But I mean, this is hands down the craziest mountain town in the world. What's it been like for you? I mean, how do you manage? I mean, we were talking before, there's crazy fear of missing out, constantly things happening. There's this wonderful, wild energy, but personally, I find like sometimes it's just a little too much and I have to escape. What's it been like for you here?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like Chamonix is a really special place with such a cool history. And like, so like being in the mountains is, what this town is like, the whole history of the town, the culture comes from that. And so it draws people from all over the place. And it's totally true that like you can get really bad FOMO, that especially I feel like happens in the beginning when you move here. And then after a while, you kind of realize that like on literally any given day, someone is doing something crazy or awesome, and you can't like be jealous all the time. You have to take rest days, and like in our case, we have to work, and so like you kind of have to be like, oh, like I could do stuff later, but also because so many people come on like vacation, or they'll spend maybe a summer season here with really recreating as their main focus. I'm like, especially around UTMB, for example, I'll get like tons of people I know who are coming to run and they're training for like a month, and they'll be like, oh, do you want to go for a run 10 a.m. on a Tuesday? Oh, do you want to go for a beer at 2 p.m. on Wednesday? And I'm just like
people forget that we live here and
I'm not always on vacation.
Yeah. I think that's the problem, with vacation towns in general, right? It's like, hey, I'm here, let's go. Like, I'm working. Like, you're working in Chamonix, that's crazy.
What kind of idea is that?
We also have to say that like the level here, maybe this is obvious, maybe not, but it is unlike anything else in the world. So when a friend says, do you want to go for a trail run? you have to look at their Strava and say, well, that looks really cool, but that ridge on Buoy is a knife edge ridge for thousands of meters, and I really don't think like my progressive lenses are the right, you know, I mean, the level's very high.
Well,
and it's a little intimidating.
It can be intimidating, but it's also, I think in some ways can be reassuring too, because like when you get into like with say FOMO, or like you can get into this comparative mindset, which anybody can be, you know, like you feel like what you're doing is something that's like, you know, not that big of a deal compared to like what other people are doing. And in John Krakauer's Eiger Dreams, there's like this great scene where he climbs the Grand Capucin, which is like this incredible big alpine climb, and he runs into somebody who's like, oh, you soloed that? And he's like, no, I just climbed it. And you're like, oh, okay, you climbed it and then you flew off the top? And he's like, no, I just climbed it. And then they say, oh, you don't find that a little banal? And like, so it's easy to be in that mindset of like being like, oh man, you know, like I'm not doing anything crazy. But then you have to remember to be like, oh, right, but like I'm comparing myself to the best alpinists in Europe or the world, or the best trail runner.
I have to stop you right here now, because there's part of the introduction that we missed, which is that you are thoroughly badass. I mean, you had the record at the Tromsø Sky Race, which was subsequently beaten
by Johanna Ostrom.
Okay,
an amazing time.
You came within seconds, I think, of the Trofeo Kima. These are like very technical, very badass sky races. And I mean, I saw you last summer, one of the few races at Matterhorn Ultrex Extreme, like running over stuff that was just like, oh my God, like the route goes over that. So, you know, if you're experiencing some of this sort of comparative, you know, tension, that says a lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like important to remember that, like, we literally all feel that. And so it can be reassuring to be like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't need to feel bad, like, because that person is like the best in their discipline. So like, it would be normal that I, you know, would not be doing that.
I want to talk about your accident, because you had an accident coming here, because I think those are sometimes sort of formative moments for people, and I think maybe that was the case in your accident. I don't want to say silver lining, because accidents suck, you know, and you know, but tell us about what happened, and then maybe want to talk about what happened after that.
Yeah, so it was the first winter, second winter maybe, that I was in France. I was getting really into, you know, backcountry skiing and alpine climbing and stuff like that. And I think that actually it's interesting, because what happened with me is in some ways, I think, kind of indicative of things that can happen in Chamonix, and I can go back to that. But we were up skiing a steep couloir, like a 50-degree couloir that you do rappel to get into, and and on my second turn, my binding just popped out, like, you know, kind of a human error, gear malfunction, whatever. And I did, you know, the entire couloir, about 450 vertical meters. I was going to say,
what was the first? And then I thought, no, what's the second word out of your mouth?
And so I just, you know, ragdolled all the way down, a long ways, actually flying over some friends who were lower down, because apparently I was getting a lot of air.
Flew over them?
Yeah.
So this is actually like, I mean,
it was a big fall. I don't remember most of it. And pretty miraculously, I like slotted into the Bergschrund. In between.
The Bergschrund, we need to explain, is the crevasse between a steep slope and a glacier. Often a large crevasse. So you fell you took a crevasse fall after.
But that was what stopped me, because it like narrowed down. So
Gerardi, I never heard this. I'm glad you're okay.
Me too. but like really miraculously, like usually you wouldn't be like, oh, thankfully I went into the crevasse.
Yeah, right. Only in Chamonix. Oh,
But-
good. The crevasse just where I need it.
But thankfully I did, and stopped there. And
How did
really
you-
miraculously though, I was not like seriously injured.
Did you feel?
Um,
Did you do one of those like system checks? Of,
oh, completely. It was like
Yeah.
like my limbs
feel
are
my-
here, like
yeah.
and I did, like, I had a big cut on my lip, so I had like blood all over me because face
Yeah.
cuts bleed a lot. And
You did that just because you're kind of dramatic that way, right?
yeah. Actually, I cut it myself.
Yeah, right. In the crevasse. I'll be there in a minute, Brad.
But so yeah, so then Brad skied down to where I was, and I mean, I think like I can talk about it okay because
Yeah.
I didn't completely black out, but like I don't remember that much. But I think for for our friends and for him, it was a lot scarier because they just saw me,
Oh yeah.
skiing like. Whew.
I mean, you could have died.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so Brad was able to lower me rope and get me out of the crevasse, and then I was airlifted by the PGHM, which, if people do not know the PGHM, it's the Mountain Rescue Service here, and they're extraordinarily professional and really incredible. And they flew me to the local hospital. And I literally, aside from like really bad contusions and some cuts, and like I was okay, holes in my helmet, like clothes literally melted from like friction.
Seriously.
Yeah, and a big SLR camera in my backpack that was just like blown apart. But I was like okay, and so I think that the reason I say that's kind of like indicative of what can happen in Chamonix is because I think I got myself in some ways into that situation because when you can get on a lift from the bottom of the valley to over 10,000 feet,
you can very quickly be in
super dangerous terrain.
Super serious territory.
And so like, I was used to skiing steep, icy slopes. I grew up in, skiing at Berg Mountain in JP. But like, the objective danger in a place like that is really high. And if you can just pop on a lift up, like it's easy to forget that you're traveling through such a like huge difference in landscape. And so I think that's kind of something that can happen in Chamonix relatively easily because there is this infrastructure.
I mean, it happens every day.
Yeah.
Practically.
You see the helicopter going around. There's a reason why they're so professional.
So what was the outcome of that for you? Like in the days after, there must have been this kind of reckoning of like, first like, wow. Obviously the hospital visit and then you're back home, but then I mean, for you, it sort of pointed you towards sky running and trail running, right? And some of the other things you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So like, as I said, I'd done a trail race. It had gone well. It was super fun. But I was like, yeah, I did that, And running before that, I was not a runner at all. But I kind of realized that I wanted to change, like I needed to reconsider my relationship to the mountains and how I moved through them and like how I thought about what I was doing. And so I like, sort of like I was saying, if you have to hike to the top of the mountain, like you see all of those changes,
you
like
go
you go through it
this
all and you can integrate that.
Right.
And so like, I kind of, I didn't like for a while, I was like, I'm going to like stop mixing like ropes and crampons and ice axes and skis and all these things. I'm back into doing those kinds of things.
Yeah,
but with a bit
we'll talk about that in a minute.
A little bit of a different approach. But so I decided I wanted to change a little bit on like how I was moving through the mountains, and I was kind of like casting about like what did I want to be doing, and I remember Brad being like, well, like trail running went really well for you that time.
That one race in the Adirondacks.
Like, why don't you try that?
Yeah.
Okay, like, and we actually he and I signed up together for a relay in the Chartreuse Mountains outside of Grenoble.
Okay.
And I did a 50K and he did a 30.
And that would be the last time Brad raced with you.
And, yes. But so that was like kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna like try something different. We're gonna like try to really approach how I, how I am like in the mountains in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's when I started running. And then, I mean, sort of in some ways, the rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, that got you
but
started.
yeah.
And did it have a role? I mean, I think of you, you're a Black Diamond sponsored athlete and many other sponsors. But I think of you as like one of the most thoughtful sort of all mountain athletes. No, I mean, I'm going to explain myself here. Yeah. No. You really think about consequences. You think things through. I mean, I know some of the projects you're daydreaming about now, and I know how analytically and carefully you approach them. You really think through like how, like, am I up for this? How is this going to work? What are, and we'll talk about that. We've been teasing the Haute Route. We'll get to that in a minute because that's well worth talking about. Do you think your accident informed some of that? It must have, huh? Or not? Am I just?
I know, I think it definitely did, because when we went into that ski day, for example, it was like somebody had just said, oh, why don't you ski this? And it was like blindly like, sure, that sounds good,
Right.
Like
right.
I saw a picture of it. I can identify where it is on the map, but like
Right.
that was all the thought that I gave it. There was no like, am I prepared for this? Like, what is my skill set? What would the consequences be of a fall? Like, and really thinking about like, and is the weather right, and the conditions, and like there's so many factors that can go into something, ought to go into when you're, especially when you're in a place like the high mountains.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that experience pushed me to sort of think about how I go about things in a different way. I would also say that I think that sort of tendency or that skill has developed over time also with Brad, because as he went through, years of training to get into the guide program and then doing the guide program, and we do, a lot in the mountains together still, that his experience through all of that training and has really informed the way that he does things. And because we do things together, like I've absorbed a lot of that.
Absorbed some of that by, osmosis. So this may be the moment to, mention then that what Hillary 3 weeks ago now, what she did 3 weekends ago was set the first, with a partner, Valentine Fabre, who's a wonderful, one of the past French national ski mountaineering champions. The two of them set a record, the first women's record of the Haute Route from Chamonix to Zermatt, Switzerland. A thoroughly badass weekend. I want to talk about that in just a minute. I see that we're getting a bunch of questions, which is really wonderful. And I wanted to mention, we jumped right into teasing you about your trail runner back cover. You can, in Zoom, you can find the chat function and, send us questions. We'll get to a round of questions from the audience. Apparently they're out there. Thank you. In a few minutes. I wanted to sort of switch gears a little bit. We're going to do a lightning round also, but first I want to talk a little bit just about trail running here in general and introduce, if this were logical and more organized, that might have come first. But it's so much fun just launching into questions. It's just like one of
any conversation we ever
any conversation we've ever had. Maybe a little more gossipy off camera, but never. But tell us, like, let's talk about the trail running here. I mean, we're just transitioning now. I did a run from Chamonix this morning up to here, about 15K. I hardly ever check Strava, but I happened to check it because Strava told me that I got. Are
you a local legend?
I'm a local legend on a route, only because I'm slow. But I did happen to see, so I thought, oh, I'll go look at the leaderboard, and third in the leaderboard is Kilian Jornet. So that's only in Chamonix. I am number 1,200 out of 2,500 people because it's part of the Marathon Mont Blanc route, which is actually just at the site here. But how would you, for people, you know, primarily in the U.S. but around the world, how would you describe the trail running here?
Wow. Well, I think, you know, so I know that you have like aptly called Chamonix like the trail running capital of the world. And I think that it can be, but it's like kind of for this period of time of a couple months.
August. July and August.
Yeah, July, August, even September as well. Right. But I mean, there's fantastic trail running here. There is, you have to be ready to do a lot of vert. Because like, I mean, if you can't actually tell behind us, it's just like Chamonix is a narrow valley and then just like boom, straight up on both sides. So doing a lot of vertical is basically required.
But we do that slowly. I mean, we fast hike that.
Yeah.
Nobody runs it.
I mean, almost no one runs it.
Remy Bonnet.
I mean, he's just like a feather and just gets blown uphill by the wind, I think. But I mean, so basically the way that the trails are set up are like, you've got like runs running on the valley floor. It's almost like a ladder, right? Like it's like flat and then like trails that go up, and then what they call the balcon, which are like a balcony that like run sort of horizontal, and then like you can go up and hit another balcon. And I mean, there's just like, there's so many trails here, and from just about anywhere you can get a pretty awesome view because there are really great mountains all around. But it just like, you never run out of things to do here. I would definitely say sometimes I admit, like, so I live in Saragosse, which is on the other end of Chamonix, and we have amazing trails in Saragosse too. And sometimes I catch myself being like, oh, where am I going to run today? Like, there are only 17 options leaving from my front door. And then I'm like, check yourself, Hillary. Like, like
suck
we
it
are
up here.
so lucky to be living here. And that said, though, as I said, like, it's this window of several months, and I wouldn't, like, you need to also do other things, or except that you can't like always be running, or certainly not always running fast, because right now, as you said, we're like, you know, in the shoulder season, the trails at the base of the valley are mostly all snow free, but then you go up to like the first rung of the ladder and it's like mostly snow free, except you have to pass over 5 avalanche couloirs with like hard snow. And like, so you need to have your, you know, probably not your ice axe, but like your micro spikes, and like kind of be like skittering across. So like, that's probably not where you're going to do your tempo runs, but
but, and I have to say that, like, I think that's true of a lot. I mean, you know, Chamonix is the Alps on steroids, but a lot of the Alps, you know, you've got your huts, tons of trails going up to, I don't want this to turn into an ad for Run the Alps. We're doing trips this summer. Because
but that's, I like though that you mentioned the huts, because that is one of the other sweet things, is that obviously in normal times there are huts that are open and you can go get really nice snacks. So that's like a great motivator to be like that. I know you like blueberry tart. I know Run the Alps is blueberry tart. Personally, it's the raspberry one or the lemon one for me.
We are, the camera perhaps is even focused on one of the, on the hut with the best pies in all of Chamonix, of any place in Chamonix.
Oh.
Yeah. Just to switch so you can see the mountains a bit?
If you want, sure.
Do you guys want to see the mountains?
We'll point out the Mont Blanc Massif in the clouds. It was a nice sunny day earlier, but we're getting a little bit of clouds here, and I think some rain tomorrow.
You're focusing on the mountains.
So that's kind of a little glimpse. And I have to just, you know, interject, because we touched on this a little bit, but the number one question we get around the Alps is like, what pace do you go at? And I have no idea what pace we go at. The thing is, we're hiking, you know, everybody fast hikes, you know, on the uphills here, and then you run where you can run. So I think that's pretty standard for Chamonix and the rest of the Alps.
Yeah, I have had people ask me, like, you know, what's my 10K time? And the answer is, I literally have no clue. There are trail runners who do 10Ks, like you take a Ruth Croft, who just smashed it in a 10K and a marathon yesterday. But I am not one of them.
Well, that's a very good transition to the first question in our lightning round here.
Oh, was this inspired by Wait, Don't Tell Me?
It might have been. Some of you might know my NPR background. But And then we're going to talk about the Haute Route,
Okay,
because
and then
we've been
you're gonna
teasing
take
people too
questions?
long, and then we're going to take. I see a whole bunch of good questions here. Someone from my old hometown in North Sandwich, New Hampshire. Thanks. Hi.
Hey.
Okay, I'm going to
Okay.
go as quickly. Now, Hillary has not seen any of these, so some of these may surprise you. I promise
And
they're
I
not.
want to give fast responses. That's the idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you can explain if you want, but we're not
Okay.
going to spend too much time on
Okay.
this. Okay, speed workout or vertical kilometer?
Vertical kilometer.
Okay, close win in a race or a total blowout where you've won?
Like a sprint to the finish.
Like with Jasmine Paris.
Like with Jasmine Paris.
Beating her by what, 11 seconds?
If that.
Oh, okay. Killian or Walmsley?
Killing.
Okay. Summer or winter?
I would just go back to that really quickly to say.
Okay.
The mountains.
The mountains, right? Exactly. Right. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Right. Summer or winter?
Oh, ooh. Summer. Day length.
Okay. And I know the answer to this one from our conversation right before this event. Croissant or baguette?
Baguette.
There are croissants here. Stop. You have to explain. She said she wouldn't have a croissant.
I didn't say I wouldn't. I would just say that I hit the
you hit the wall
so hard when I first moved to France. Like I was at the bakery every day, and I kind of OD'd, and I just like don't crave them anymore. I still enjoy them when I eat them, but I'm more of a salty person anyway than sweet.
Okay, so the baguette that okay, all right, fair enough. French or English?
Oh, why must one choose?
Because I'm asking you.
Is this a language, or is it the people of France or the people of England?
Oh, I don't want to start a war. It's the language.
I mean, English is my mother tongue, so.
So you're going with English.
And I read a lot in English. I actually brought I thought we had show and tell. I brought books.
Show and tell. Apparently, we're gonna have a show and tell moment. I think we're gonna go a little over here. I hope it's worthwhile. UTMB or Marathon Mont Blanc?
Marathon Mont Blanc.
Et pourquoi?
Well, I am signed up to do the 90K that happens this year, and it's just a race course that really draws me in more than the courses of the UTMB.
Right. Now I'm signed up for the 90K too. Will you wait 10 hours for me to come in? You would take a shower and then nap and have a meal and come back and see me at the finish.
I don't know if you heard about this. This is like, it gets into like very niche things, but at the Échappée Belle, which is a race, an ultra across the Belle Dune Massif, Francois Dahan did it a few years ago, and literally had time to like take a several hour nap before the second person got it.
That's gotta hurt. Night at a hut or bivvy on a ridge?
Bivvy on a ridge.
Ford or Chevy? We're kind of covering the bases here.
Chevy. I don't know why.
Fiat or Peugeot?
We had a Peugeot. Her name was Sylvie.
Okay, you had a Peugeot in Vermont.
No, we had a Peugeot here.
Okay, because that would be a very Vermonty thing if you didn't have a Saab.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, our Peugeot was her name was Sylvie because she was the silver Peugeot, and that made us think of Sylvia
Poggioli. I knew you were going there. NPR correspondent from Rome.
Yeah.
Sylvia Poggioli. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Raclette. Oh, good thing we have Big Mountain Brewery from our friend Jack, and who's married to our Run the Alps guide, Emily. Raclette or fondue?
Raclette. Which, incidentally, I think you know this, but raclette means scraper.
I didn't know that.
In French.
Every day I'm trying to learn one more.
Means to scrape, and it comes because raclette traditionally is like a big wheel of cheese, which they put a heating element to melt it, and then they scrape it down.
Right.
Means
she is a font of knowledge, maybe a font too. Music or solitude when running?
Solitude, unless doing really hard like interval workout or something.
Okay. Uphill or downhill?
Up.
American diner style breakfast or continental breakfast?
Diner style.
Diner style.
My pre-college job was at the Miss Lindenville Diner.
Oh, I've been there. Really? You worked there?
Sure did, hon.
That's all right. I want that coffee coming within 30 seconds. Ski mountaineering or rock climbing?
Ski mountaineering.
Okay. George Clooney or Roger Federer? You don't even really, doesn't enter in your world, does it? Okay, well, okay, you may have a problem with the next one. Oprah or Ellen?
Yeah, I see. That I didn't have a TV
you're like, okay, that's all I got.
Oh.
We've got a couple. American or Italian pizza?
Oh, Italian pizza, for sure.
Would you rather get the Olympic medal or the Mont Blanc fastest known time?
Oh, I mean, Mont Blanc fastest known time, also because there's no trail running in the Olympics. That's easy.
And then we also had a shout out for the Miss Lindenville Diner.
Yeah!
Oh, that's crazy. What a small world. So the Haute Route. You're giving me this look like, well, I'm going off the script, don't worry. It was really, I have to say, it was really incredible and really cool to see you off at the church in Chamonix 3 weekends ago, you and Valentine. Now, there's a lot to talk about here. I want to sort of narrow or zoom in a little bit. We'll talk about how it went. But first of all, one thing that really amazed me is that there was no women's record for this. And let's first back up actually and explain what it was that you did. Can you give us the stats?
Yeah, so, well, the Haute Route generally describes an itinerary usually done on skis between Chamonix and Zermatt. It was first ever done, actually it was first ever done on foot, I think in the 1800s, but then in 1903, a French team did it on skis. And typically it is like 5 to 7 or even 10 days, you know, skiing and staying at huts. And there are a lot of different variants you can do to it. So the one that we took though, was essentially trying to say like, how direct can you go? What would the fastest way to get
point A to point B.
A to point B? Understanding that you can't actually draw a straight line because there's
what, one of the world's largest mountain ranges.
But so the route that we took was around 107 kilometers and 8,000, which is about 66 miles, and about 8,100 meters of vert, which is 26,600. It goes over, again, the route that we took goes over 8 different mountain passes that have sort of varying degrees of technicality, never like super technical, but not infrequently are you putting, you know, crampons on.
Where it's such an alien world for some people. I'm thinking like, where can people, I guess on your Instagram, right? People can see some photos of the route. That was not a subtle plug. I mean, it's worth going to because it's really incredible scenery. You're in big mountain territory.
What I would say also is that like the Haute Route is it's maybe the most famous, like, you know, ski traverse that you can do. So you can also just like Google it, haute couture.
Right.
But I knew that I wanted to do it as like soon as I heard about it, but I thought I wanted to do it over like, you know, most people would do it like over multiple days and stay in huts.
But because you cram a lot into your life, you only had 26 hours.
You know, it's like, who wants to, like, you don't want to stay in a hut right now with COVID. So
might as well just knock it out. Entirely, And to explain, like when you left Chamonix, you had your skis, you know, obviously down in Chamonix here it's springtime, you had your skis on your pack, you were wearing, you know, one-piece ski mountaineering suit. I actually had 2-piece. Okay.
Valentine had a one-piece.
Valentine had the one-piece. Very Euro, say. And you had, you know, equipment and gear for, you know, big mountain, you know, experience. But you left Chamonix essentially like running / fast hiking up to actually not far. Well, we can see it from here. And then you headed, so you're running, you're skinning uphill thousands of meters, you're skiing downhill there are photos on your Instagram of like going up a really steep slope, like so crampons, ice axe.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool. It like, I mean, the individual thing, like parts of any given part is like not too dissimilar to what I like doing in the mountains in the winter anyway. And it was, though, kind of like combining it all in a pretty short time period. But I mean, for me, I think one of the things that like motivates a lot of my projects is I love maps, and I love to look at maps and be like, ooh, could I go from there to there, and could I do this and this? And like the Haute Route is this famous route that, as you mentioned, has had, you know, a series of men's records established on it, never had a women's record. So that kind of like made me be like, oh, that doesn't really make sense.
So why is that? Why do you think that happened?
I don't know. No, I mean, I can make some guesses at it, kind of. There aren't that many men who have done it. Though I think that, as I noted, that I think, you know, our goal in part was to inspire more women, but it's also inspired a bunch of men who want to do it too. Missed the target a little bit. But I mean, it's a big undertaking, and a lot of different things have to line up in order for it to work. Like, it has to be a priority. It's not something that you could just be like, oh,
let's
you know, why don't we just
it's a narrow window to be able to really spend most of the time on skis between here and there.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And I think that actually, especially with climate change, like that window when things when you can do it is smaller than it used to be, because it starts getting warmer earlier, and the valleys are melting out, so there's no snow. And, you know, as you noted, so we started in running shoes, but then in the middle of it we ended up not having our running shoes because we left them when we put on our skis, but then not having running shoes and having to go, you know, like kilometers and kilometers running in our ski boots. And like, if you want to try to go fast or not cry,
ski boots are not the way to do it.
So there's that. Also, there are, like, you know, places where you've got, you know, with glacier melt, for example, you've got moraines that are getting exposed that are pretty unstable. And so like those places to pass through them, they're getting, you know, so they get exposed because of glacier melt. And then in the springtime, that, you know, those rocks and everything kind of warm up quick, melt fast. So it just makes it harder to do and to do safely. So
rockfall risk and loose ski slopes
and really unpleasant. So that's, I mean, that's definitely part of it. It has to do with these conditions. And then so everything has to line up. And then, you know, unfortunately, at this point, I think I don't know as many women as I know men who are comfortable as skiers, alpinists, and endurance athletes. That like all those skill sets. So which is why I feel so lucky to have connected with Valentine several years ago, because she's got like the whole package. And I think that more and more women are getting into that. But it's been sort of something that has been we see more like men doing than women doing so far.
Does it strike you that you're a role model for this? I mean,
I'd love to be. I am.
You are.
So,
I mean, does that cross your mind, or you're just out doing fun adventures? And
no, it definitely does cross my mind, because I think, you know, representation, right, is something that's super important. And like, I know when I go to a mountain hike, actually, so yesterday, as you know, I skied the Mont de Long, and, you know, like, I saw dozens and dozens of people skiing, and I saw 2 other women. And like, if you don't see people that you can identify with, it's hard to project yourself into like doing that as well. And I think that's true for women, and I think that's true for people of color and people with disabilities, that like, if like, if you don't see anybody who looks like you, or that you feel like you
can't imagine yourself.
Like, why would you think that
Right.
space was for you?
Right.
And so I think that it takes a lot of confidence a lot of times, and amazing opportunities to be able to say, you know, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. And I feel lucky to have that privilege and to have developed confidence as an athlete that I want to then be able to like put out there, like, you know, other people do this too. Like, hey, identify with me. So like,
that's really well said.
I do want to be a role model in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do have the personality to screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. That's a Gerardi, I think perhaps a Gerardi family trait.
Can I say one thing? That's just, I wanted to mention just a little shout out that, so through one of my sponsors, Scarpa in North America, they've got a really cool athlete mentorship initiative.
Oh yeah, right.
And I have an awesome mentee. His name is Junior Rodriguez, and he's sort of like an all-around athlete. And he is Mexican American from Texas, and is setting some really cool goals for himself in trail running. Not trying to be the fastest or whatever, but you know, trying to push himself, his own limits, and also like say, you know, like, hey, you know, like more people who look like me should be out there. And I'm really psyched to be able to work with him and to see brands beginning slowly to step it up to try to support more equity in a more diverse outdoor community. Yeah,
that's cool. And Scarpa's, they've partnered their mountain athletes with individuals.
So Scarpa in North America started this initiative, and we all began really in January. And all of the Scarpa North America athletes who wanted to were welcome to participate. And then, you know, people applied to be athletes. And so there's this whole batch of really incredible climbers and skiers and runners who are paired with athletes and, you know, trying to help grow our community.
That's really cool. I want to get to some questions from the audience. But first, I just want to say congratulations on the Haute Route. That is like really pretty incredible.
Thank you.
I mean, it's not incredible knowing you and Valentine. It's truly badass, and was really impressive. It was fun watching you guys on WhatsApp and following your Garmin, I guess it was. And what were and just two final questions on that: high point, low point.
I think anyone who has spent like, you know, a lot of time in the mountains, or even had the luck on their first time or whatever, to spend either the end or the beginning of the day in the high mountains, where you either get to see sunset or sunrise and have good weather. Like, it's such a special moment to be up high when that happens. And so that was definitely the high point for me. I think low points, so like my personal like morale low point was probably when my phone it like chimes at 10 p.m. when like to remind me it's time to go to bed.
Time to go to bed. And where were you when that happened?
We were hiking with our skis on our back in La Folie, and I was like, oh this is a really long night. So that's like one of my low points, which is
should have turned that off.
Should have thought of that before. But my low point, I think, was almost nothing compared to Valentine's low point. Because anybody who's done like an ultra before may know well the experience of when your body just says like, that'll do, no more food or liquid in me. And she just, her stomach just refused to take anything else in, and she was throwing up and was really sick a couple hours from the end. And when you've been going for 24 hours and you can't eat or drink, and it's hot, and like you're also at high elevation, we were over 10,000 feet, like she just felt awful and really had to like dig as deep as possible. And I was like, probably only moderately helpful because I had also been going for 26
Yeah.
hours
Well,
and just being like,
you can't necessarily help out someone when you're,
yeah.
you know, digging deep also,
Yeah.
right? That's pretty
Yeah.
difficult space.
Yeah. Another high point
yeah.
though is that we had help from people along the way,
Oh,
which
yeah.
you know, I would love to see. I know Petter Restorp, for example, wants to do it unsupported, which
Mhm.
would be amazing. We had
Mhm.
support along the way,
Mhm.
and so there was a moment when we were expecting Brad and her partner Ben at the Col de l'Évêque, so like this high mountain pass, and like I thought they were gonna have be like at the pass with thermos, and they had dug in like these benches in the snow and put a tent, and it was like I cried.
that was
Yeah,
that was pretty. That must have been pretty nice to see.
it was really special.
Cool. Well, congratulations.
Thank
That was really cool. I want to talk about Créa Mont Blanc a bit, which is a
Mhm.
really interesting nonprofit here in Chamonix, where both you and Brad work,
Yeah.
and ties to your interest and concern about climate change and what's happening here in the valley in particular. But first, I want to take some questions.
Thanks for asking questions.
We have a great staff here, by the way, Dave and Jen. Do you want to throw us some of the questions that you've been seeing?
Yeah, so one from the start was, what is the best one-day 12-hour maximum run in the White Mountains? And that's from Brian Lambert.
Okay, so back to the White Mountains. Best one-day 12-hour run. In the Whites.
I mean the Pemi Loop.
The Pemi Loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, classic. This is a 32-mile loop in the heart of the White Mountain National Forest.
Does the ridge, Franconia Ridge, and then goes over the Bonds, and is wild, and probably actually goes through some of the most visited terrain and least visited terrain.
Right.
Of
so
the White
I have a lightning question for you. Clockwise or counterclockwise?
I've only done it clockwise.
Yeah, I think clockwise is totally the way to do it. You get the right answer. Okay.
And then coming here to Chamonix, Steph asks, what is a good first run to do in Chamonix?
Ooh. I consider Doug to also be able to answer these questions, but it depends on like how big you want to go. If it's the day that you flew in and you're like don't want to go too hard, I think La Floria.
La Floria.
La Floria is like a really good
really
run.
Good food, nice view, good reward ratio.
Yeah.
Right.
If you want to go a little bit bigger, I would say probably one of the Balcon Nord or the Balcon Sud.
These balconies, which run,
they're the part of the ladder
up in the snow now.
Across.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other things that jumped out? I see some here too.
You'll have to repeat the question because I think I've been
right. Okay.
What are Hillary's future goals and why? That's from Bob Najar.
Okay, he's jumping ahead. Hillary's, I've got that. Thanks, Bob. Future goals.
Future goals. Yeah. Well, so my next, my first race that I'm signed up for this year is the Mont Blanc 90K, as I said, which is a race that actually Mimi Kotka, who I believe is going to be on a Run the Alps trip later this year.
We'll talk about that at the end.
Has won and was like, oh, Hillary, you have to do this. It's a great race for you. And
have to do it. You have to do it. Why? I mean, can we explain a little bit about the 90K, which is
it's funny. It was called the 80K for a long time until I think everybody like revolted and was like, come on, it is 90K. Stop saying it is 80K. And Doug, I know you had a personal experience with that one, looking at your watch and being like, oh,
we were all looking at our watches up at the 80K mark at Montalvert going, what do you have on your 80? No.
But I mean, it crosses some of the most beautiful terrain around Chamonix and is also relatively one of the more technical races that happens in the valley, maybe the most technical race in the valley. So this year I wanted to do some longer races, and so that's the big goal. I admit to not being ready to like tell all of my mountain plans yet for this year, but I'm hoping to.
We'll have to have you back. Right.
I'm hoping to try some more fun stuff. Draw some more lines on the maps, and but the one thing that I would say is that I feel like the last year, sometimes it makes you want to be like, I just like want to get away and I want to travel or whatever. And I think that for me, in a lot of ways, it's actually been affirming year in being like, okay, like you chose a place to live that like has a lot of the things that you want to do. And it's been really rich for me to just explore super intensely what's around here. And I actually use Strava, well, extract the data from Strava onto this called, I think it's called like multiple rides mapper, and it makes a heat map of just the things you have done. And I love it because then I like look for dark spots on my map, and that's how I choose new places to run.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else jump out?
Dream trail run trip outside of France.
Hmm.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, oh, that's right. So the question is, what's your dream trail run trip outside of France?
Well, so I'm not sure if this is like, if it can be one I've already done or if it should be what I am dreaming of. But one of my favorite places that I've ever gotten to run is actually northern Norway. I feel really lucky to have gotten to race at Tromsø twice. And both times that I've been there, I have been also lucky to be able to like, take a week of vacation and go exploring. And there are just some really insane places, especially on the island of Senja, which is south of Tromsø. And
there you go. Okay.
So that would be one. In terms of where I would like to go, there are so many places in the world that I would really like to run. I've actually never been to Colorado, so I'd like to go run there sometime. But
okay. Well, it's a whole nother. How did that happen?
I don't know.
There's a gap in your trail running. Well, you got a fellow BD athlete. Two of them.
And anyway, just the American West in general, there's so much cool stuff to do. And Junior, my mentee I was talking about, has been talking to me about the Teton Crest Trail, which sounds really cool. So I'd love to go there. But oh my God, I mean, I could literally like list for a really long time. Also a lot of the Eastern Alps and like getting sort of into, I was lucky to run in Bulgaria once, and I'd really like to go back and run in the mountains of Bulgaria. Slovakia, Slovenia, like that would be really cool.
Okay, you got a big list.
Yeah, big list. Yeah. And getting out of Europe, but I'm like trying to not travel too much.
And let's talk about that. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about Run the Alps, where we are involved in trying 1% for the planet and trying to do the right thing, and concerned. And I think living here in Chamonix, we are almost daily, on a daily basis, reminded, of climate change. We see the glaciers disappearing, and we see all the impacts. Your work, you and Brad both work for Alpine Research Organization in town, a nonprofit and association, Créa Mont Blanc. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do there?
Yeah, so Créa Mont Blanc, it's a small nonprofit. There are only, actually we have somebody new who started on Thursday, so there are 8 of us. But we all actually work part-time because we all sort of have other mountain activities. So we're all just basically really passionate about the mountains. But it was started by Anne de Lescade, who's actually your neighbor. She really wanted to start this organization when she realized that she felt like there was a disconnect between what was happening in sort of the world of science and the general public, and that she, living here, felt like there was just such an amazing world outside that people aren't always knowing what's going on. So that was sort of one of the things, was like, keep doing scientific research and then sharing that research with the general public. And that's happened through citizen science programs, educational programs, share it with the general public so that they can also like be like, wow, this place is amazing. Like the animals, plants are incredible. And so it actually, I didn't say, so our focus is really on biodiversity. So there are definitely researchers who are studying glaciology and permafrost, but we're looking at the whole ecosystem and interactions between particularly the living world, plants and animals, and the impacts of climate change on those living systems.
Can you talk a little bit? I mean, one of the things that's so striking here in the Chamonix Valley is that permafrost disappearing,
Yeah.
and literally the mountains collapsing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about
You can't see the
what's
proof.
going on there? And so the permafrost is this frozen,
Yeah.
holds, it's like glue. The glue that
That's
holds the mountains
literally
together,
what I
right?
was going to say.
Okay,
Is
so-
that it's permafrost is a lot of people probably have heard of it based on like on in the Arctic, for
Mhm.
example, because permafrost is anything that is like permanently frozen or like
Mhm.
always below zero.
Mhm.
And in the mountains, like at high latitudes, that can oftentimes be in the soil.
Yeah.
And here it is literally like glue that holds rocks together and the mountains together. And so
Mhm.
when things heat up, or when there's a lot of melt freeze, because
Right.
that's a lot of times when you'll see it.
Instead of staying frozen
Instead
throughout
of
the
just
summer
staying
or
frozen,
whatever. Okay.
either like it's going to melt and things are just going to fall down, or there's going to be like, new water infiltrating and then freezing and expanding and
Okay.
kind of like kick
Okay.
stuff off. But it all has to do with it being warmer up high.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the huge things that we see here in the Chamonix Valley, or fortunately that we do see it, and it's really visible on something like the Drew, for example, where you see this huge light
The
colored
Drew,
star.
what you're explaining, is this
Yeah.
world famous, pillar
Mhm.
on the Mer de Glace, which is a glacier that is disappearing in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
And so a big part of the Drew collapsed.
Exactly. And that was during the heat wave of 2005. Anybody? Oh,
Mhm.
2003 or 2005, one of those big heat waves. And yeah, the whole face of the mountain fell off.
Yeah.
Fortunately, nobody was injured. But that's like, a direct, super visible impact, and something that I think actually maybe to like bring it back to trail running just a little bit is that like, honestly, trail running is one of the more resilient sports, I think, in terms of climate change. Not entirely the case, because with climate change, we're going to be seeing more and more heat waves, and it's really unpleasant to run when it's hot. But other sports that we do in the Chamonix Valley are more directly impacted by climate change. So alpinism, both because of permafrost melt and because of like, sometimes you'll get a famous route and a glacier will be melting and it suddenly has like a polished, full pitch of super hard climbing, and you just can't even get on it. Or generally the access can be hard. And then the ski skiing. So like since the 1970s, the Chamonix Valley or the Mont Blanc Massif has seen the duration of snow cover. So like how long there is snow on the ground, reduced by an entire month. And by 2050, it's expected to be the same way. That's at 1,500 meters and 2,500 meters. So like, what does that do to a ski season, right? Like it. Yeah. You evoked it with the Haute Route. Like it's a lot shorter than it used to be.
Yeah. So, and Brad works there as well. We should say, doing his PhD was in Alpine remote sensing, right? Is that right?
That was his specialty, Alpine ecology, but remote sensing was his specialty.
It's a really interesting nonprofit and good organization.
So, and Brad, so he uses like satellite imagery or aerial photos to understand landscape change long term. So we do see things as well, like tree line going up. If you talk to Claude, who's the guardian at the Degree Hut, he kind of said to us like, man, like, I see the trees coming closer and closer to the hut, and it presents a really interesting, like, thing to think about from a management perspective, because like, what do you do? Like, do you manage it? Do you cut down the trees? Do you let them come? Obviously, we want to fight climate change, which is contributing to this. But I think that one of the reasons it's interesting to look at it here and understand it here is that it's happening really fast, and the Alps are actually heating twice as fast as the northern hemisphere. So
we're experiencing it very quickly here.
Yeah, and so it can kind of be like a case study for other places, right? So we see it happen here, and like, how do we respond to it? How do we adapt? And what can that indicate for what will happen in other places?
Thanks for that explainer. We're going to wrap up now, and
I don't know how it's been, sorry.
We have a really fun going away present for you, which I can't wait to give to you. But first, I wanted.
Did you guys get Brad to come and tell us that we can get a pet? Is that the surprise? Oh.
Sorry. That's a bigger project. But I want to thank Jen and Dave who are here, and a bunch of the Run the Alps crew. We've all been working on this first, rendezvous. If you have suggestions, you can drop us an email. I'd love to
And
know
if you have like
who to
burning
do next.
questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, because
Right.
I'm always happy to respond to people.
Yeah,
if we
you
didn't get
reach
your
her on
questions.
Instagram, obviously.
I'm
That's
really bad at responding to Facebook messages, apparently.
Okay. I wanted to, thank all of you wherever you may be. I saw a bunch of the registrations, a lot of folks from the US, but also elsewhere in the world. Thanks for tuning in and joining us. Oh, I just wanted to mention too about Run the Alps. We are in fact doing trips this summer. There's some indication that France is going to be opening up soon to American travelers
who have been vaccinated.
Who have been vaccinated, exactly. And I wanted to talk about our Mimikaka trip, which we just announced, which is really fun. Yeah, Mimi is a really, I have to say, one of the world's toughest, strongest, most incredible trail runners
and people,
ultra runner, and a wonderful person, a really cool person. In this month's Trail Runner magazine, you can read an article about Enzo, their dog.
Doug likes dogs.
So, but she's going to be joining us in September, right here in Chamonix for 4 or 5 days. For those of you who want to make the trip over. So there's a little bit of shameless
I'm
commerce.
hoping to come for a day.
And we're going to get you for a day to do technical trail running, to talk about how you run some of those exposed spots. So thanks everyone for joining us. Now we have a present for you. You've totally forgotten about this. Actually, it's not so much a present as it is we're giving back something. So I have to explain. Hillary won the Mont Blanc Marathon vertical kilometer. You know you're getting that, don't you? Yeah. And we had a Run the Alps apartment at the base of right in Chamonix. And I think you maybe actually biked there. Is that possible? You had your bike in town?
Yeah, well, I was working and
So she won. She gets these huge trophies. And she says, could you hang on to these? I gotta bike to Servoz. So we are giving you back. It's not exactly a prize or a gift. Vertical kilometer, Chamonix 2018, Premier Scratch Dame. Alors, voilà.
I would like to have, I would hope you add a little ponytail.
A ponytail. What you do with your trophies is up to you. 90 kilometer. No, 2019 Premier Senior Dame.
What? This one is Katie Shine's. I didn't know Katie Shine left you one too. Katie, you gotta come for a chat and get yours.
Katie's gotta come. We're holding it hostage. Clearly, that's it. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
That was great. I'm going to eat my croissant, and I might eat yours too. Hey, that was really fun. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks for
having me.
Great.
All right.
That was